You're listening to WLPN LP Chicago 105.5 FM, Lumpen Radio, Bridgeport. And we're just going to keep on going. I want to say hello and welcome to everyone out there. I'm your host, Chris Quinn, and I am very happy to be here once again in the Co-Prosperity Sphere, Studio B to be precise. And I wanted to thank Lumpen Radio for having me on. You guys listening live probably didn't think we were coming on, did you? You were listening to some music, and we busted in. But I wanted to, as I was saying, thank Lumpen Radio and its fearless leader, Logan Bay, stepping up and helping me out. We have him. Actually, we have the fearless leader himself in studio. Might be why we were, not why we were a little bit late, but we had some snafu and who came in to save the day, but Logan said, I'll be right there, and now we have a show. So very literally thanks to Lumpen Radio and its fearless leader, Logan Bay, on this particular Thursday. I want to thank everyone who's listening in. Live on 105.5 FM. If you're there, if you didn't tune out when you didn't hear us come on, I know you guys wait around for me, so you can hop on to the chat room if you so choose, and chat us up there. If you're listening via podcast, thanks for downloading us again, and feel free to leave us some kind remarks on iTunes or whatever other platform that you've got going. For those of you new to the show, I just want to let you guys know that the goal of the show is to open up a window into how the people making, selling, marketing, and facilitating the beer getting into your glass feel about the topics that are a part of their everyday lives. Many of my greatest beer experiences have been talking about beer while sharing beer with people whose opinions I respect and admire, and it's these experiences that I hope to capture with the Insiders Roundtable. And with that, I will introduce my guest. I think it's going to be an interesting show. It's going to be, it's always interesting when things get off to the non-normal start. Although to you guys, I don't know how much it really matters. It's really me who gets, I think, out of a rhythm. I do have to first mention, two things. First, the opinions of my guests are their own and solely their own and are not affiliated with any other entity such as Lumpen Radio or the Beer Temple or anything like that. The second thing is anyone else getting a weird little pingy, high-end metallic sound? I'm getting like a little ping thing in there. I don't know what that's from. I've never heard that before, but, I guess Logan's out of practice a little bit, now that he's, just an executive sitting in his cushy office. He has to get down here in the trenches. You'll see what's happening. You hear it right then? Yeah, I hear it at the end. It's like a little, I don't know, like a metallic tinny echo or something like that. Anyway, I will introduce my guests. I don't know who is the senior guest. I think it's you, Adi. Someone's pointing at you. Another guest is pointing at you.
I knew this day would come.
Yes. How are you?
I'm good.
Adi Hastings of Omega Yeast.
Yeah. No, things are good. Busy at work, and that seems to be a constant state that you get used to a certain workload, and then more happens.
Right.
And then right about the time you adjust to that, more happens.
Right, exactly. And you guys have a whole bunch of stuff going on. Well, you were telling me before that this week was essentially, extra crazy, partially because of CBC, the Craft Brewers Conference being last week.
Yeah.
Everyone taking time off to
party.
party.
Yeah, you totally notice. So last week, being the week after CBC, pretty light week because no one had been around the week before to put in yeast orders, and this week has been crazy because lots of people playing catch up.
Yes. And in addition to that, you guys at Omega are opening your own tap room. Is that right?
Yes, we are. Still in the planning stages, but most certainly sometime in 2019, hopefully. And yeah, it'll be a full-on brewery and tap room, serving a variety of different kinds of beers. To that end, we just got a 1-barrel pilot system at work.
1 barrel.
Yeah.
Wow.
Maybe like 6 weeks ago, and we've already done several batches on it. And what I've learned is 10 people can go through 20 gallons of beer very, very quickly.
Yeah, I would imagine now that you have it just free flowing.
Yeah. We just we're brewing something Tuesday. We have a split batch with some fake yeasts, some Norwegian yeasts.
I thought you said fake yeast.
No, fake.
Kvake.
Yeah, my former job as a linguist, I can tell you that Scandinavian vowels are super weird.
Okay.
So these are all yeasts that were usually used by homebrewers in Norway, have been handed down sometimes multiple generations. And one of the really interesting things about
human generations,
not yeast generations, which happens to span over about 8 hours. And the most interesting aspect of these, at least to me, is that they ferment cleanly at very high temperatures. So we're pitching them at like 95 degrees Fahrenheit.
Oh, wow.
And they're going up into the triple digits. And because of that, they produce a whole host of esters and stuff that you get when yeast is like really supercharged.
Yeah.
I mean, yeast really like those temperatures, but most strains that people use in beer will produce a whole variety of off flavors.
Weird flavor, like what
fusel
sort of,
alcohols mostly, which is sure recipe for an instant hangover. And these don't. So I did a rye wine, like a 10.5% rye wine, fermented at 95 with one of these. And I was drinking it just after it fermented, and it didn't need any time to condition, didn't have any fusel alcohols, like was not hot or solventy, just 100% delicious.
All right. And is that what we're drinking here?
No, this is a Brett Saison.
That's right.
Yeah, this is I have a house Saison mix that I do, then added some Brett and dry hopped with a lot of Galaxy and Mosaic.
Nice. Where'd you get your hands on a lot of Galaxy and Mosaic, or just homebrew quantities?
Yeah, homebrew quantities. We're talking in ounces. Not pounds.
Okay. Cool. Well, thanks for coming on.
Yeah, thank you for having me again.
Good luck with everything. My second guest is Mr. Andrew Gill of his own blog, right?
Yes, my famous blog since
what's
last
the name of
uselessbeerknowledge.com. That's
uselessbeerknowledge.com. How's that been going? Is it up and running?
I've written exactly one more post, so I have 3 things up now. But I've got a number of other things. I just got to take the time to actually write them.
What was the last one about?
Firestone Lager, which we had talked about on the show.
I want to talk about that a little bit. So, hey, Adi, can you do me a favor? Yeah. Can you turn off that disco ball that's on?
Absolutely.
It's annoying me, and I hear it. Thank you. So there's been a lot of talk about that, the Firestone Lager and the Solid Gold and everything like that. And I had a Solid Gold a couple days ago. I think I had one Tuesday at game night. I saw you there.
Yes.
Adi. And Stephen, who works at the shop and is been on the show and says that he really liked Solid Gold, and Andy Crouch, the beer scribe, pretty infamously here, at least recently infamously to me, probably to nobody else, said that he really hated Solid Gold.
Yeah.
And I had one, and I thought it was pretty good. I don't know. I mean, for what it is, I thought it was way better than, certainly very light lagers.
There was a theory I saw floating around Twitter was that there was a different recipe being used now, or something had been dialed in. Like the batch that Andy got may have been
terrible. Okay,
different thing, But
Got
who
it.
knows? That's the speculation I saw.
It tasted like a very light lager with raw hops kind of put in it, which doesn't sound like it's the greatest. It's not the greatest, but it's pretty good.
Yeah, that's actually my one sort of thing that I don't like about it. It's super grassy, and not into that.
The times I had it, I had it once a while back, and I didn't get any hop character at all. So maybe that was the batch Andy got too.
Yeah. Okay. There was a lot.
Yeah.
It was pretty unmistakable. Another interesting thing that happened was with Firestone anyway was 805 is by far, it's this weird beer that if you're in California is ubiquitous.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just known as 805. And I think
billboards everywhere,
Right.
up and down, like the interstate,
and
stuff.
not even like really branded very closely to Firestone. It's just 805 as its own thing. And believe it or not, for people not in California, 805 makes up something like 70% of their total output. Isn't that amazing? So it's like their Allagash White, essentially.
Except not as good.
Well, there. So I got some. I think it was the first time I'd ever had it, or at least the first time in a long, long time that I've ever had it. And fine.
It's a blonde, right?
Yeah, it's a blonde ale.
It's
Right.
totally inoffensive.
I had one next to Rev's Cross of Gold.
I was going to ask which one.
I think Cross of Gold was definitely better.
Yeah.
I liked it more. And
4
everyone
ounces less. The cross of gold. Though,
That's
right?
true.
So-
You do get less. Well, that's actually a very good point. But yeah, I preferred Cross of Gold. Although I will give the clarity, visually 805 had the edge. It was brilliantly clear, pretty striking beer, and also that can, that big black matte can, 16 ounce. Would look kind of cool, in California outside in someone's hand and stuff like that. And that then got me thinking about how beers with like that sort of like single can appeal could potentially do really well. And I know like War Pigs here is launching a Goza seasonal.
Yeah.
So I was just thinking, like, oh, okay, I could see a bunch of, hipsters sitting outside in a beer garden with these black cans, and that kind of becoming like a thing. Which I don't know if has that ever happened really, or any recently at all with craft beer, where there has been, it's almost like a fashionable to have that sort of accessory in your hand out at the bar or something like that.
Like having a visual. Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean the breweries would love for that to become a thing.
I don't know. I mean, not necessarily craft beer, but certainly PBR a few years ago was kind of that, where you'd go to any kind of hipster bar and half the people would be having those. Now it's more High Life and Hams, but still.
Right.
It's funny how that's changed, and it changed talking to some bartenders at these bars. It's changed remarkably fast.
Yeah.
It just like switched.
The funny thing is that PBR, they started getting this hipster status, and then they started actually marketing to hipsters, and then they drop them.
Yeah, right.
They sponsored artists, and there was like graffiti, like all these things that you'd think are like kind of a cool thing for PBR to do. But
They're like, no, we want hams now.
yeah, we want the bear from the 70s.
Right.
Yeah,
We
exactly.
just want whatever is, I don't know. I mean, is it like well, who knows if it's like there's an irony element to it, and if they know they're cool, they're not cool, and I don't know. Yeah. Anyway, who?
I don't know. I do remember in my 20s, what I drank was often based on what was cheapest and not like completely terrible.
Mm-hmm. Well, PBR is probably cheaper than High Life still, I would think, or at least relative, and Hams as well. I think Hams and PBR are probably pretty similar. Who's to say? Who knows? PBR, I mean, I think of those three, well, I don't know. High Life's fine. I think PBR might be my favorite of the three, personally. But anyway, I think what were we were talking about your blog?
Oh, yeah.
Useless beer. talking about useless beer information.
Yes, useless beer knowledge.
Uselessbeerknowledge.com.
Yeah. I mean, I've got no way of monetizing this beer knowledge. I think about it all the time. I'm not in the industry. I just, it's useless. So,
well, we have a letter that maybe talks about how to acquire useless and useful beer knowledge. We'll get to that in a little bit. But first, I guess we should probably go around and see if there's any beers that people have been drinking lately that they've been digging. Adi, anything?
Yeah, this will also be sort of like shameless plug. But we recently did a collaboration with Maplewood on a Brut IPA.
Yeah.
Which this is going to be the summer of Brut IPAs. Warning you now.
Yeah, just because everyone's buying the yeast.
It's not yeast; it's process driven. So it's you can use any yeast, but it's a new thing, and it's kind of the anti-New England IPA.
Yeah, there's out in California. They're starting to they want to name it, and we talked about it a couple shows ago where we were just noting how quick people were to jump on it, assign it a name, say this is what it is, rather than just being like, this is an IPA and this is how we make our IPA.
Yeah.
I think that's funny now.
It is, and people want to sort of, and I know that several breweries here in Chicago have versions coming out in the next few weeks, and it's but I personally prefer my beers dry rather than sweet, and so this really sort of you use glucoamylase enzyme to break down all of these long chain sugars that yeast normally isn't able to digest. Breaks them all down into simple sugars, and so it ferments bone dry. Then you hop it like an IPA, carb it like champagne, and it's good.
And the is it all are you like hop bursting, or are you putting in kettle hops? Or
yeah, no, it's okay. So because it is, you have such a low finishing gravity because it finishes so
you don't
dry,
want any bitterness.
Really low bitterness. We did one at work. We did one at work a couple of weeks ago. That keg went in 2 days. And that was like maybe 20-25 IBUs. So yeah, really not.
And that gives it. So what does it? And then I'm sure the carbonation also helps with that too.
Carbonation. So you get all of this sort of like aroma like coming up, and very effervescent, dry, hoppy juice. But not juice.
Right. So and then how does it? So what is it? How does it finish? Does it finishes
crisp and dry? Yeah,
crisp and dry,
and that's really sort of what you want. So we when we did one at work, we used sort of classic West Coast water profile, so high in sulfate.
Mm-hmm.
So you really want that sort of like clean and crisp finish. You don't want it sort of being sort of like rounded in the mouth or anything like that. There's really, and the malt bill is super simple. We did, I think, 2-row and wheat, and then just throw.
Why wheat? Why'd you put wheat in there?
For head and for a little bit of body because we knew it was going to finish. So we're thinking about doing a new iteration with flaked rice, though. So go in the opposite direction. Really sort of super clean,
super dry,
super dry.
Well, that's already a beer. You can't call it. You can't call it super dry or extra dry.
Or extra dry, and extra dry uses rice as well.
Yes, it does. And it's an excellent beer. Yeah, I'm curious to see how this Brut IPA. I think there's a very good chance that if it uses all the popular new hops, that it'll do quite well.
Yeah, no, it's really. I mean, you can use any kind of yeast. We used another Norwegian one in our version, as did Maplewood. They used Voss Kvik.
Why? Because you want to get some of these esters, or
yeah, you want so to give it some yeast character. You want some like fruity esters. I think most of the ones I don't know for sure, but most of the ones they've been doing in San Francisco are probably super clean yeast.
Yeah,
Chico kind of thing. But we wanted some, and we got some nice yeast character. Combined well with the hops. It was mostly New Zealand style hops.
Cool.
So like very wine-like. It's
gonna be.
It's easy mode. Like you do that.
We had it at the Beer Temple, but I was out of town and didn't get any of it.
No, Stephen told me the keg was done after 2 days.
Yeah. I'll have to try some again.
Yeah,
I also wonder how that beer will do on draft. One thing I will say about the hazy IPAs is they're very easy on the draft system. You cannot mess those things up because they really don't have much head to them at all.
No.
They're very low carbonation, so they pour great. But this, if it's super fizzy, I wonder if it'll give people fits at in tap rooms.
We thought about that, and actually, in our version that we did at Omega, we decided actually we liked the carbonation a little bit lower than that, so under like 3 volumes.
Okay.
So not quite sort of like Saison or Champagne.
Oh, okay.
But higher than you would get like a IPA or certainly a New England IPA or something like that.
Cool. How about you, Andrew? Anything?
I went to a thing last week. The guy from Fuller's was in town. John Keeling. And I was invited to do like a sampling of their vintage ale.
Yes.
So they had a vertical that we tasted, and I had never had that beer before. So that was quite good.
Yeah, that's a great beer. Kind of their old ale or stock ale or something like that.
He said it was a barley wine, basically.
Yeah,
but they claimed, I haven't checked this out, but they were claiming to be one of the first breweries starting in 1997 to like actually recommend aging these bottles and selling older bottles, for a premium and stuff like that. Yeah. So
interesting. I know. I mean, there's been beers labeling their vintage on it for a long, long time, but I'm not sure. Yeah, how many people have been holding back and selling vintage things for?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Anyways,
I don't know, making more money off it essentially.
Right.
Yeah. For me, what have I had lately that I've really liked? There was a Toppling Goliath beer that was a little bit of a blast from the past stylistically. I think it was called Supa Sumo, something like that. Mm-hmm. And it was clear, and it was incredibly dank. Very, very kind of marijuana heavy on the nose, very herbal and green, not really juicy at all. And it's great. And people have been really loving it as well. So it's interesting to see in a high, craft focused bar environment like the Beer Temple, people sometimes are almost surprised when they like the non-haze. What else do you have that's hazy? What else do you have that's hazy? What else do you have that's hazy? Well, let me try that too. Oh, this is great. I love this beer. I'll have one of those. So that's always nice.
Because that style was like kind of at its peak like 6 years ago, right?
Yeah.
So it's like a generation ago.
Right. They've never had them. Yeah. I mean, next it'll be, I mean, the piney beers are hard to find now. I mean, and this wasn't quite piney, but piney beers are kind of a thing of the past. I can't think of too many.
Yeah.
No one advertises it's like all Chinook, like
right.
like pine in your face.
Yeah, nope. Nobody really does
that. There's that one Deschutes Pine Drops.
Yeah, the Pine Drops.
Yeah. That's right.
Yeah, with the Top and Goliath, Pseudosu used to be clear as well.
Yes, and they've changed. They've changed their beers.
They've changed their beers, so it's now sort of very much within that spectrum of sort of like hazy, hoppy beer. Whereas, it used to be totally bright. And I'm not sure exactly when that happened.
I think it's happened with more than one of their beers, too.
Oh, yeah. Golden Nugget is like that, too, now, I think.
I brought a can of Pompeii here.
Okay.
That I figured we could try.
Yeah, we'll see for ourselves.
Yes. A beer that I'm excited to try is, so the guys from Modern Times are in. It's Dark Lord Day weekend here, so there's a bunch of visiting brewers who are coming into town. And they stopped by with a couple cans of nitro beer. It doesn't have a widget, so I brought a can of it here.
Oh, okay.
It's in there. It's a little 12-ounce can, and I think it's essentially one of those like Mexican chocolate stouts, bourbon barrel aged on nitro in a can. So from Modern Times, who can put out some good stuff. Yeah. So I'm very excited to try that tonight on the show. So I don't know how we'll be able to, you're just one of those ones you're supposed to pour.
Yeah, pour hard.
Right, pour hard. So I mean, I don't know if they had the the beer geek ticker mentality in mind, because it's not meant for sharing. But nonetheless, I think the four of us here will find a way to enjoy the beer. I have every confidence. So Logan, I don't know. Our timing is all messed up, but it doesn't go by how long we're on. It goes by the time of day, right? So it's just a half hour we have to mention things. Okay, all right. Okay, every half hour.
10 minutes to station ID.
10 minutes until station ID. Okay, got it. Hey, that's one of the first times we've ever heard Logan's voice. There you go. That's what Logan sounds like. The ball buster himself. So let's get into then. We've never done letters first, but let's get into the letters. So for those of you out there who may not know, you can shoot letters to us. You can send them to 3219 South Morgan Street in Chicago, Illinois, 60608. That is the Co-Prosperity Sphere. You can send it to my attention or the Beer Temple. Logan would be fine. Really anyone but Ed. Don't send it to Edmar. Edmar's attention, it will likely be lost. And has been lost in the past. So that's 3219 South Morgan Street. Been a while since I think I've gotten more hand delivered letters than I have actual written letters lately. It's been a month or two or more since I've gotten a letter. So it's always nice. It's like getting a present in the mail. But if you don't want to do that, you can also send an electronic letter, and you would send that to the address of insiders@craftbeertemple.com. That's what Zach Allen did, and he wrote, I've only been into beer getting close to 2 years now, but have put a lot of study time into it since then. Getting ready to take my level 2 certified Cicerone exam, hopefully the first day of GABF. I read any book. Sorry, I will figure out how to read. I read any book I can get my hands on and listen to a handful of podcasts. My question is, where do you find are the best places to learn about the history, styles, and specific beers themselves? That's the first part. And then he says, also, I work at the largest liquor store chain in my state of Oklahoma. Never mind. It's no chain liquor store state. So hold on. Let me start over. Man, I'm having a hard time here. All right. Wow.
I think there's a law against liquor store chains in Oklahoma.
Yes, that's what he's
just
saying.
saying it's
Okay.
an independent store.
So only one person can have a single license. I'm the manager and the beer buyer for the store I work at, and I'm constantly trying to figure out new ways to improve, organize, help the staff learn so they can better help the customers and make the experience when it comes to beer as pleasant as possible. I heard about your store almost as soon as I started researching beer. I'd like to hear you talk, I think he means me, about what you do different at your store. How do you manage what to bring in, what to pass on? How do you separate yourself and things you think have put you a step ahead? Okay, so thank you for the very kind letter, Zach. So I think the first part, it's we've got some pretty knowledgeable beer folks on the show, so I thought this would be a good letter for Adi and Andrew as well as myself. But he says, this guy Zach, is getting ready to take the Cicerone exam. He's been into beer for 2 years, and he's definitely in that kind of like voracious state where he wants to learn everything there is to know, which is cool. Much like Ali last week, he was very much in that state as well. So he wants to know what are the best places to learn about the history, styles, and specific beers themselves. So I would almost put history and styles as one thing and then learning about specific beers as another thing. But I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, certainly there are books. I find books, especially in today's beer world, seem to be out of date almost as soon as they're printed.
About styles, you mean?
Styles. And I think there was this. I was just reading this today, but there was a thing in Paste from today or yesterday about Josh Noel's book.
Yeah. He has a book. Yeah.
But it was talking about how beer books are really sort of can be very dated. So you look at Mitch Steele's IPA book from a mere 6 years ago.
Right.
And it's almost completely irrelevant to how people are talking about IPAs and stuff. I mean, today... There are some people that be like, wow, argue that no, it should be relevant, but it in terms of what people are drinking and making, not so much.
Right, in terms about what people are making and how.
Yeah. So those are great introductions, certainly to how things used to be, and I mean, there are a bunch of different sort of style focused books. I get most of my information from the internet, though. But like things like Facebook groups devoted to certain kinds of beers and beer styles can be useful if sometimes high like noise to signal ratio.
And also for somebody who maybe isn't a yeast scientist, how do they know what's signal and what's noise as well?
Oh, yeah, well,
because you could probably learn a lot of inaccurate info.
This is true, and if you ever go into like any of the old homebrew forums, you see there's all sorts of horrible misinformation that passes around as fact. Fake news. But yeah, I mean, so yeah, it takes a little bit of discernment. But you read enough, and but also, I mean, the best way to learn about beer is to try every one you can possibly get your hands on.
That is, I would say that's a great way. It's a good point.
I mean, if you don't know what a Doppelbock is like, try a few. You can certainly
and take notes.
Take
notes, even if it's just on Untapped. Take notes, and it'll force you to kind of think about the beer a little bit, and then when you have another Doppelbock, to think about how it's the same and how it's not the same and stuff like that. That's
having doing blind tasting with several different examples from the style, like really focus you on thinking about like what is it that makes this particular beer different than these other ones? What are the things that unite all of these beers into like what people might call a style?
Right. And then also, I've always found, for me, knowing a little bit about the history of styles helps me understand them more, why they are like they are, because it's usually for very practical reasons that a beer ended up being the way it is.
Oh, no, absolutely.
And to me, that just helps me kind of put it in context and also see how it relates to maybe other beer styles from that region and so on.
No, exactly.
And so forth.
You learn about how lambic brewers all do turbid mashes, and it's not because like that makes a better beer and they discovered this. It's because mash tuns were taxed based on their size. So you had to
everything comes down to taxation. Like I'd say at least all the old beer styles
exactly
came down to money, really. I mean,
no, absolutely.
You can think about, I'm just listing in my, so you've got, lambic, anything British,
yes.
anything Scottish, anything, German. The whole Reinheitsgebot was really just a way to tax beer. Hefeweizen was a way to have basically a monopoly on a beer style so the royal family could, make more money, essentially. It is amazing how when it just boils down to that, and then war also tends to kind of play a role somewhat as well. But how do you learn this stuff? I think is what also Zach is asking. I've got a few just I could reel off pretty easily. If you want to learn about the process of beer, the best text is John Palmer's. What is it? Brewing beer.
How to brew.
How to brew.
Damn.
That is, I think, bar none, the best home brewing text I've ever read.
And I would say that even if you don't plan to homebrew, reading a book like that can be extremely helpful in terms of just understanding the basic process in language that any person can understand about what goes into the whole process of
and the
making
first
beer.
version of that book is available free online. He updates it regularly, or used to anyway, but you can still get the original version for free on his website. So that's a big one for me. The Oxford Companion, I think, is still a good reference. I don't think it's really a good one, just mainly because of the layout to read. It's alphabetical, and you don't want to read about beer alphabetically.
And it needs an update. It doesn't have an entry for Goza,
Right. Yeah, they need to have. They need to have a edition 2 for sure.
Or appendix or something.
Yeah. I think Jeff Allworth's, is it the Beer Almanac?
Oh, the Beer Bible.
Beer Bible.
Yeah.
Beer Bible's a great one, and also Tasting Beer from Randy Mosher, I think, are both excellent kind of overviews, but serious overviews, not like very cursory. But if you learned, I've told people before, if you knew everything that was in Tasting Beer, you could easily pass the Cicerone exam. If you actually absorbed everything in that book.
Yeah, I gotta say that's pretty impressive too. Like into craft beer for 2 years, and he's already taking the Cicerone exam.
Yeah, I know. That's awesome.
Go get him.
Yeah, right. And I'm thinking, other than that, for books or resources or anything like that, I would say, let me think. What are the best places to learn about the history and styles? Those are pretty good ones for style. Great Beers of Belgium from Michael Jackson.
Michael Jackson is always,
I started just collecting his books a couple of years ago, and they're mostly not out of print, but there's not new copies available really. So, but you can get them on Amazon used for $5. They're so easy to find. Yeah.
Okay. His are great. I mean, these are all great ones, and you can dive deeper into specific styles that interest you.
Yeah. Every style has at least a couple of really good books written about them. I'm trying to think of some style that doesn't.
Right. I mean, if you want to go deep into English stuff, you can go to Martin Cornell. He's got one called like Amber, Black, and Gold, and then many on sour beers are out there.
And Ron Pattinson stuff
on
the history of mostly British beer, and
Yeah.
I mean, it's all. Some of it really takes you down the rabbit hole.
Oh my gosh! I bought a book from Ron Pattinson on bitter, and it was. So I'm looking at one of these like chargers for a laptop. It's got, you know how on an Apple, it halfway down the cord there's like that big white block. It's as thick as that block is as tall. So what's that, a solid 3 inches or so, or 2.5 inches on bitter. Haven't really cracked it. It was a little too much. I was like, okay, don't know if I need. He's got like brewing logs from every bitter brewer there ever was. But anyway, what about the other side of stuff? What about learning about specific beers? Is that maybe, Adi, when you would go into
Yeah,
forum?
no, I mean, you go into a forum, see what people are drinking, what people. I mean, there are a lot of like online, like on Facebook, but also on their own platforms for talking about beer. Talk Beer, I think, is one of them.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm in a bunch of Facebook groups that are mostly devoted to particular styles that sometimes it's just people posting pictures of beer they drink, but other times why they like it and what they like about it.
Yeah, which is also.
And you
valid.
learn about like, oh, like, you know, I don't live out on the East Coast, and all these interesting things happening, you know.
I have to mention before I get yelled at, look at me, ahead of it, Logan. I have to mention you're listening to WLPN LP Chicago 105.5 FM, Lumpen Radio Chicago. Anything else, Andrew?
You know, I would throw out a left curveball to him. You know, I am not really a home brewer much. I've tried, but it's not really my jam. But the way I got into learning more about beer was like I did a podcast about beer. So I'd like book brewers to come and I'd interview them and ask them all the questions I had. So, you know, I just started a blog like a few weeks ago.
Yeah.
He could start
I've
a
heard.
blog and
Yeah.
he could interview anyone he wants probably, you know. You just email the brewery info thing and say, hey, I want to talk to someone. I'm publishing here, and you'll probably get somebody at the brewery to talk to you. You know, it's not like they're getting press everywhere all the time.
No,
They're-
and generally speaking, brewers do like to
Pretty
talk
friendly,
about
yeah.
and they do like to talk about beer.
yeah, exactly. So, I mean, if you've got some, you know, like hero list of people that you want to learn from, like just try to reach out to them, you know, just get the chutzpah and talk to them, ask them your questions.
The other side of things, he wanted to know. I mean, I'll open this up to everyone. He wants to know what I think what the Beer Temple does more than just like what specifically I do differently there, and how do we manage what to bring in and what to pass on, and how do you separate things, and how do you stay a step ahead?
I am also interested to hear your response to this.
Oh yeah, okay, interesting. So I will. Well, let me think. I don't want to just be blasé about it, but I've for years been talking about what I do. I guess not on this radio show though, oddly. So it's about once you have a base understanding of beer, I think, about styles and about history and about specific beers themselves. I think from there you'll know what's the best for the beer, how the beer is going to show the best, and then you can kind of decide how you want to implement that for your shop and what makes sense for you. That is what the Beer Temple was kind of founded on. Now, it was the first shop I'd ever owned or really worked in, more or less. I had spent a little bit of time part-time at a beer shop to kind of figure out just if I was going to hate this line of work. But I just we went pretty far with it and just tried to prevent beer from skunking and keeping it fresh. And now we're focusing a lot on temperature control, which we haven't really made a big public deal about. I'm sure eventually I'll find reason to kind of, stand up on a soapbox and start shouting about how great we are. But that's kind of what we did, like what on the retail side can be improved about beer, so you can know more about beer, so you can talk to people from a knowledgeable standpoint. You can know the makeup and the flavor profiles of different styles. And then when people tell you what they want or don't want, you can start directing them to beers. I mean, a lot of people who told me they liked Scottish ales and Scotch ales and stuff like that, I would a lot of times push them over to German, like Dunkels and Schwarzbiers and stuff like that, which doesn't seem like it would make a lot of sense to go from an ale to a lager. But if you understand that in Scotland, it's colder up there. And, the yeast ferments more, colder. And when yeast is fermenting colder, what happens, Adi?
You inhibit the production of esters.
Of esters, which, and then they tend to be not very hoppy because if you look at history, the Scottish hate the English, and the English is where the hops are being grown, and they wanted to buy as little as possible from them, so they didn't buy many hops. So you had these basically clean, not very hoppy beers that tended to then be more malt driven, and there's other styles like that, and you start getting to German Dunkels and stuff like that, and it all just comes from understanding like styles and history and stuff like that. So that's kind of what we did. What to bring in and what to pass on, I think, is knowing your customers and also knowing how much faith they have in what you like, and just trying to understand what you can sell, and if there's some stuff that you're okay with sitting for a while. Not every beer in your store is going to be a fast mover, so find the stuff that you kind of want to have around all the time and don't mind it sitting on your shelf for a couple months, and won't hurt the beer to sit for a couple months. That's what kind of we do. And buy light. That was my thing. I don't really do a lot of the beer buying at the Beer Temple right now. But that was always my big thing, is I would much rather I'm not also the best businessman, so I don't know if your boss would appreciate this, but I would rather sell through the beer quickly than have it sit around a little bit longer, even if it will eventually sell through. I figured there'll always be a new beer coming out, and the fresher stuff's going to taste better. And if the beers taste better, even if people are understanding this kind of subconsciously, then they're more likely to come back to you. And that was with freshness. And now I think with storage, my hope is even a beer that has the same packaged on date will taste better at my store versus another store, because we keep it cold all the time, a lot of it anyway. So that's just kind of how we're trying to stay a step ahead. So I don't know, anything you guys want to add?
Do you have any kind of pledge or anything that you only buy beers that you like? Or?
Nope.
No.
I don't have any sort of pledge. I try to stay away from absolute rules, because they're just going to get you in trouble, because somebody's going to find a way that you're being a hypocrite and stuff like that. Yeah. I don't make anyone take a blood oath or anything like that. I mean, there's a lot of beers that I don't. You may not know this. I don't really like pastry stouts. And I don't really like hazy IPAs as much as a lot of people do. I mean, I think I can appreciate them, and there are hazy IPAs I've loved, and there are pastry stouts I've loved. But
they're all ones you made in a French press.
Right, exactly. Exactly. So, but, I mean, people want them, and I don't know. I mean, there were like at the same time, I wouldn't bring in Not Your Father's. I thought that beer was just trash.
There are some lines that you won't cross.
Yeah, and believe me, we could have sold plenty of that stuff. And that to me was just garbage, and I wasn't sure why, but I just didn't like the beer. And because of you, Andrew, and your investigative reporting,
Yes.
it was discovered why. What was up with that brewery? I mean, and for those of you out there, I'm being very honest. Andrew did some investigative reporting on Not Your Father's root beer, right?
Somewhat inconclusive, but yeah, I did talk to a VP at Pabst about it, and they never did produce the recipe book that they claimed they got the recipe from
Right.
1800s or whatever.
Surprise,
yeah.
surprise.
Right.
And we analyzed it. We sent it out to White Labs. They volunteered to analyze it for us. If I had known you then, I could have gotten it a lot easier. But yeah, they didn't conclusively show any evidence that it was, grain alcohol added to it or anything. But,
I think we all know
Yeah.
that it was. I think we all know that it was.
I didn't get my hands on the 10% or the 20% versions. So.
Yeah, well, that was the sort of first inklings that
Right.
actually a large portion of beer drinkers actually just want alcoholic soda.
Yep. That was the proto pastry stout.
No,
right?
exactly.
Totally.
And now we have milkshake IPAs. So
Now we have milkshake IPAs. I don't think those are going to be a big thing. I just
No.
don't think that. The
No,
milkshake IPA.
one can hope.
I don't know. I mean, here's the thing. Is it just, and maybe you're not part of this, Andrew, but I think just from what you said, Adi, you are, and so many people I talk to who are in the beer industry and have been for a while many people are just not into it. And is it a sour grapes thing, or is it just like they're just not into it? I mean, they all say that they just don't like they don't enjoy them.
Yeah. I think some of it might be sour grapes, but I think there are a lot of beer drinkers that like the taste of beer, and the more sort of things that you start adding into it, the less it starts to taste like beer. And I think some people really don't like that. I'm not a super fan of pastry stouts. But I said before, I mean, I like my beer very, very dry. So saisons and whatever are my jam because.
Yeah. So actually, since I was on last, we've had our pastry stout event. And Josh Noel, who has a book that came out, came by and
Is he paying you?
yeah, we did like 4 of them. I actually could not really be there for the event. The reason I wasn't there was that it wasn't out of protest, believe it or not. I was just there for a little bit. It was actually my daughter's birthday, so I couldn't be there. But I did do. I mean, between Josh and I, we did, I'd say, at least 4. I did a total of, I think, 5 or 6 of them. And I did learn that oil is not the friend of the pastry stout.
No.
So, like, putting in mole sauce, like, some of the flavors are fine, but then you get this weird greasy, like, film on your lips, and it's very odd.
When I was at the beer temple this week, there were still the placards up for the different
The fixins.
The fixins, and how did that sardine one go over?
Right. So somebody did crack the can of sardines and put them in there with some biscuits.
Oh.
He actually brought biscuits with him and had a whole reason why he thought it would play well. I don't know. The other thing was somebody took single fooder bone lambic and added gummy peachy rings to it. Adi just like looked down in horror, but apparently it was pretty good. That's what
I can imagine it being pretty good, but it still offends me.
Right. I mean, imagine if Frank Bone had been there watching that happen. I mean, that's what we had. I had given it instructions ahead of time that if people want to, I said, any beer up there, we're not going to tell them they're not allowed to do it. And I even used an example. I was like, if somebody wants to take single foot or bone and French press it, I guess they can. I think I actually said that to Josh Noel. And, but that surprised me that somebody did that. But hey, people had a lot of fun. I think there was some blowback. I haven't personally seen it, but people were telling me that they didn't like the idea and thought I was being, I think, elitist and stuff like that.
What? I mean,
whatever.
In the
I
week
care.
before that event, there were like 2 different local breweries that put whole chocolate cakes in their beer. Like,
Right. Well,
both from Portillo's too. It's not just that
I
they
know,
made.
that's crazy. Yeah. But anyway, people had a fun time, and I don't think we'll be. I mean, there is. I looked it up. There is a National Pastry Day, so maybe we'll bring it back for National Pastry Day. Yeah, Pastry Boys for Pastry Day. Well, cool. Anything else for the letters? Did you guys have any questions for me or for just general about this?
It seemed like it was dovetailing nicely to that first topic.
Yeah.
we have too, so.
Yeah, I think we should. It's the so the indie label. That the, you know what? Is it time for us to take a break, Logan? I think we should probably take a short break, right?
Sure.
So why don't we take that's what do we call that, a tease?
Tease.
Right, cliffhanger tease. We'll listen to some tunes, and then we'll come back and we'll talk about the indie seal and what the Brewers Association wants retailers to do with that. That's Beer Temple Insiders Roundtable when we come back. Welcome back to the Beer Temple Insiders Roundtable. I missed some of those foreign jams. I forgot the Logan touch on the music break, man. So it's good to have those back. I'm your host, Chris Quinn. I am joined by my guest, Adi Hastings.
Hastings, yes.
Yes, and Andrew Gill, and we were talking about I think Adi, or no, it was who let's just say it was a collective invention of the new style, pastry kvass.
Pastry class, yes.
I think it's a thing because essentially
Day old Pop-Tarts.
Yeah, I mean that's a style used with kind of leftover bread products. And what if your bread product was your old Pop-Tarts?
German chocolate cake.
Yeah, make kvass out of it. So I want someone to do that, and tell me if it worked or not. Put it on Untapped, rate it 17 bottle caps, and then go to mybeerseller.com and sell some for a lot of money. That was not very nice of me to say, but anyway, I do want someone to make a pastry kvass for real. You know who would make one? I already know who I'm going to talk to about it. John Lafleur. John Lafleur would make one.
Totally.
Yeah. So we were alluding before the break to this new, I guess it would be a press release or kind of a marketing effort from the Brewers Association, aka the BA, to try to expand on this independent craft label that they have been pushing. And it seems like they've gotten some success with it. I know at first there was a lot of pushback, it seemed like, in certain circles, in certain echo chambers. But the breweries themselves seem to have adopted it rather well. And it looks like. Did you have a number, Andrew, of how much was adopted, at least here locally in Illinois?
Yeah. I got an email. Let me find it. Talk about something for
yeah.
a second.
Okay.
I have an email from the Brewers Association.
Yeah. But anyway, so it says 3,200 breweries have adopted the seal. And placing it on packaging, marketing materials, merchandise, websites, and all that. That's so if that's true that by adopting it, they have actually put it on some sort of, even a website, that's half the breweries in the country.
Yeah.
That's pretty amazing. In a year or so.
Yeah, in Illinois, more than 60%, and the majority of the volume of beer too.
Okay, well that says actually a lot as well. That it's a majority of by volume and also by numbers.
I think that's the case. Yeah, at least 60% of brewers, have adopted.
That's impressive because you have Lagunitas and Goose Island here in Illinois. Making a lot of beer.
I'm gonna pull back the volume thing. I'm not sure about that.
Okay, maybe 100.
60%,
Maybe the majority of independent breweries.
Yeah, right.
Maybe
That's it.
Because that would be a hard number to hit with Lagunitas
Yes.
cranking out as much beer as they do in the state. But now what they're trying to do is, I guess, push retailers to also adopt the Indy Seal, not for their businesses themselves, but also to, I guess, have digital downloads for coasters, refrigerator wraps, shelf talkers, and other things, and essentially to demarcate on their shelves what is independent and what isn't. Yeah, so that's essentially they want it. What did they say they wanted it to be? A seal of support in the marketplace as well.
It's when I first read about this, I thought it was going to be like those beer ratings that they have.
Yeah, that's what it
next to the
sounds
price
like.
tag.
Yeah, shelf talkers.
But
and stuff.
I looked at the website briefly, and it didn't look like they're offering that. It's more like a big poster of the logo or like something to go on a cooler.
That's kind of like an awareness thing.
Yeah, a little bit of that. Like if you see this on a bottle in this store, this is what it is. Like maybe encouraging people to look for it. It seemed. And the video. Did you watch the video?
I didn't. Can you tell me about it?
It's not great.
What were they trying to say in the video?
It's just folks who aren't comfortable being on camera. And,
that's why. Okay.
It's a far cry from their like crowdfunding Take Back Craft video, where they had all these actors they'd hired and stuff.
So it says that they will be able to access free quote digital downloads. I don't know what a quote digital download is.
I think what they're
what
trying
is a
to say,
quote digital download? It's either a digital download or it isn't.
They're trying to avoid the problem of giving coasters. They don't want anyone to think that they're giving away coasters.
You can download the art and put it on things.
Right, but that's all right. That's just me being silly, but that's a digital download. It's not a parentheses digital download of coasters, refrigerator wraps, and shelf talkers. So shelf talker.
Yeah, is that the terminology?
That would be either a little tent that would stand up or something that would kind of clip in there.
I feel like that would have some value,
That would actually, I think, have value and potentially more value than it, or as much value as it being on the actual label if you could have it next to every single thing. I don't do shelf talkers, Zach, so that's how I stay a step ahead. But I do think that it is information at in a final point of sale that would help, and I think it would actually work pretty well. I do. If somebody saw two beers and one said certified independent and one didn't, and you could tell which one was in front of what, I could see a lot of people being like, yeah, sure, fine, I'll grab this one.
Yep.
Even as like a mark of quality or whether it's, legit or not. I mean, it could be they could be reaching past, a
Right.
Pivo Pils to get to a really terrible independent lager.
Right.
Yeah.
Which it's funny.
But whatever.
I mean, it's like it would be interesting if you could apply it, even if the brewery hasn't chosen to put it on the cans.
You certainly could.
Like if they fit the
the
category
retailer could, right?
and they haven't chosen to put it on the can, you could put it next to it.
There's got to be something
For
to
them.
it then, because the BA would not. Because think about, I thought of it the other way around. I thought of, if these are shelf talkers, I mean, the shelves they shift back and forth. Like the tags kind of get moved around and stuff like that, and the shelf talkers really can kind of get shifted around. So what if it gets kind of gray, where what's the independent one? Is it more towards the Metropolitan, or is it more towards the Goose Island? Which one is it? I don't know.
So yeah, what is a shelf? Like, describe the shelf talker. What are you talking about?
So a shelf talker, I think of them more in the wine world, where you have a like a wine spectator. It's like an elongated thing that kind of comes off the actual price tag,
like the rate beer thing.
like the rate beer
Okay.
things,
Yeah.
And you see them a ton in grocery stores,
Yeah.
where there'll sometimes be tags that are actually perpendicular to the shelf, where they literally stick out sideways.
so
It's
you
like a
can
little
see it from
sign, as you're
20
coming
feet
down.
away. Yeah.
So I think it could work that way if you have all these like vertical things, but I guess if you could get a couple big chains to adopt that would be a big win. If you could get like Whole Foods, who seems like someone who, from their branding standpoint, would be all about that, even though they're owned by Jeff Bezos and whatever. But that's very much their thing. And if you get them and Trader Joe's and a couple others, you'd probably have a big foothold. And
Yeah, no, I think, I mean, personally as a consumer, I totally ignore those things, but I don't think I'm an average consumer.
I mean,
So-
if
you ignore what things?
like when I like buy wine, which I know a little bit about, but I am not an expert.
Bet you don't, though. I'm telling you, the thing is, you can't ignore it. You can't ignore it if it says rated 93 points.
93,
Even if you
right.
ignore it, it's in there. It's already been burned into your head that thing by some guy or some gal got 93 points. And it's already a little bit in there.
Point taken.
I mean that rate beer stuff does definitely. I mean, if you're in a store and you're looking at two things, it factors in some way into your
Right.
decision.
Now,
it might not sway you, but you feel a little bit like, oh man, am I making the right choice getting this 97?
To go
instead of
back on
100?
everything I just said, the rate beer one is an exception where I completely ignore the
No,
rate beer ones.
even though I don't even go to rate beer, or I don't even
Right.
put much
Yeah,
stock
no,
in
I
those
hear you.
ratings.
I hear you.
at all.
No, it's
But you see it like, 99, okay.
Right.
You're right. Like if you don't know anything about it, literally nothing about a beer,
Right, like-
and you see that it's 99 on rate beer, okay, sure.
Safer bet.
Yeah.
I mean,
It's true. You're
here
right,
though
you're
is
right,
there,
you're right.
there's a little bit of difference though between the wine world and the beer world, where rate beer is an aggregation
crowdsourced.
of
Yeah, it's
crowdsourced,
BS. It's
whereas
BS.
Wine Spectator at least is ostensibly
An expert's
an
opinion.
expert's opinion.
He may not
yeah.
have the same palate as you,
Right.
but at least something. Someone says it matters.
Someone who knows their stuff,
Right.
has been like, this is a really good one.
Maybe that's what I should do. I should have shelf talkers of the
Oh,
beers
you-
I like.
Just with like a little picture of you and
Of
be
me.
like Chris says this beer is awesome.
Yes, exactly. That'd be. I would love that. A big picture of me right on it.
Well, my question though was, do you think you'll put up signs in the beer temple?
I don't think I will.
No.
I don't think that I will, but never say never.
Mm-hmm.
I think our. I don't know how much. I think we show independence and how much it matters to us by what we bring in. So I think the whole place is kind of curated some way. Now, if somebody is very much interested in not buying anything that isn't considered independent, I think our staff would be very well able to show them what is independent and what isn't. But like, what about like foreign beers? You know, like.
But even not just having the designation on the shelf, but even would you put up like a poster? Or
Yeah,
like
no, I was thinking about that too. I mean, maybe like a sticker on the window right above the thing that says that we take American Express and Discover and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But
Right where the most restaurants put Zagat rated.
Right.
I mean, stuff like that. Yeah, people love us on Yelp, which I will never have. But I don't think so. I don't. I think it's fine on labels. I think if breweries want to do that, and I think it's fine in certain settings. But I think it's not really something that fits what my shop is trying to do. And I'm trying to think of why I feel that way. I think it's probably purely aesthetic. Yeah. Honestly, I just want to keep things looking clean. Mm-hmm. But I think at other places where there's, just it might actually help somebody. Mm-hmm. And if I felt it would be helpful to somebody, I would do it.
Do you think, just to play devil's advocate,
yeah,
not to feel like I'm like trying to convince you to do this, but like, so your store, a lot of people probably come there because they're like, hey, I can learn a lot about beer if I go to the beer temple and buy my beer there and talk to someone who knows what they're doing. Do you think it might be a point of education where someone who comes in and is like not that familiar, hasn't heard of this seal, and they see it at your store and they're like, you know what, I could look for that when I go to other stores or when I'm, out somewhere else in the world. Because, people would come to your store when they're visiting Chicago. They're not even always going to be living here, right?
Right. It's kind of like doing it as like an advocacy type
thing.
Just
if you support, this idea, is it helpful for the cause or something,
Sure. I mean, that's a fair question. I don't know. I don't know how much, like am I doing my fair share? And what do I feel? I've never really had to think about it, so I haven't. Mm-hmm. But I think it's a very fair question. I honestly don't know. But I'm thinking about it a little bit more now. I am very weird, and the people at the shop, or if they're listening, are I'm sure chuckling because I get very weird with like aesthetic stuff like that.
Yeah.
So I would have to find a way for me to like it. Like if I could do a little on the price tag, a little emblem on the price tag, a little graphic on the price tag. Right. I don't think I'd ever any problem with that.
Or what if you had like a good artist that did a cool version of it or something like
the lameness of the thing doesn't bother me too much. I would just want it to kind of blend in and be a bit of information without kind of like having dangly things hanging everywhere.
Like what if it was incorporated into the mural on the wall?
Sure.
Or something like that.
Never that. The other thing is, I think it has to be taken for what it is, which is, it is a marketing effort. It is a marketing effort that I think has some benefit to it. But I think there's some, I don't think independence is paramount. I think it's very important, and I think that, I think it's really most important for the breweries that are trying to, the term Trojan horse gets used a lot on this this show, but like really the ones who are trying to pretend and trying to get in there as being independent and small and craft and artisanal, really to exploit customers' a tendency to buy that way. I feel that there are breweries out there who truly do not care one way or another about independence. I mean, there is some big breweries that are really anything other than, is it something that customers want, and how can we look more like we are that, even if we are literally the antithesis of what this label means. Like, literally, we are what they are going against. How do we pretend we are? And that's kind of like, that concerns me more than breweries really adopting it. Is I feel like it was something the BA could do. I think Jerry Nelson from Unane was the first person on here to say it. They can't. It's already been proven that they couldn't control the use of craft. It's been struck down in court multiple times. Craft essentially means nothing. They had to come up with something that they could control.
Right.
And this emblem is something. And are there gray areas? I mean, if I sell 1% more, I can't use it versus 1% less and I can. There are going to be silly things like that. And there's going to be politics where the percentage that it takes to use that emblem is going to be determined by some of your biggest, richest, wealthiest breweries. I mean, but that's just the world. I mean, that's how everything works. And there's going to be some of that there, but generally it's something they can control and can try to push back on these big guys who, by the nature of what they're doing, are trying to squash everybody else. So I think that that's important. But at the same time, there's great beers from all over the world that also don't qualify for that. So I don't want to say that you should only buy stuff with an independent label.
Yeah.
Just like I don't think you should only buy local beer.
Right.
There's a lot of great beer being made by awesome people all over the world.
Yeah.
And you should buy it and drink it.
But you're talking. It sounds like you're talking a little bit about some Borgness, even amongst the craft elites.
I think I mentioned stuff like that. But I mean, there are large. I love how you've become the interviewer now.
Sorry.
No. I mean, it's excellent.
I mean, you're the retailer, and we're talking about retail stuff. So.
No, I think that Borgness. So what are you referring to specifically? How politics come into the craft definition and how it's always changing and stuff like that?
Well, just ways that even people that fall within the Brewers Association craft definition could still be stamping out competition. The thing that the accusation that's leveled against, other corporations like Miller Coors or maybe InBev. Or
I think it's honestly, I think it's inevitable. Just like I think I said just a little bit ago, it's not that they're good or bad. It's just what they are doing. These big guys, this is what they're doing. And I think a big craft brewery is going to try to, I think, protect their turf and continue to grow. That's generally the model that breweries are following these days. I mean, the Russian River model of just kind of being happy where you're at, like, I wouldn't expect many breweries that to be the norm. So I don't know, pick a large regional or national craft brewery. I'm sure they're getting pressure from. I mean, we've said on the show before, they're in the most vulnerable spot because they're getting hit by the big guys who can put those big chain placements and have the money behind them to kind of get into these really high profile settings. And also play the price game and the incentive game and everything else like that. But they're also too big to be, the cool new little hipster startup brewery thing. So they're getting kind of hit at both ends, and they probably have to try to defend themselves at both ends. Is that squashing competition? I don't know. I mean, I'm shining a very specific light on it. There might be other times where they're in a very strong position are like preemptively trying to squash things. Who knows? I know stuff like about New Glarus has been said. I've talked to some breweries in Wisconsin who said, and didn't even level an accusation against New Glarus, but they said it was such a breath of fresh air coming down to Illinois and realizing that I could charge $10.99 for a six-pack. They said the price of craft beer is pinned to New Glarus, or at least had been. Maybe it's changed in the last year. But it's like if you were going over $7.99, and it was so low, and they said even went up to $8.99. It was huge for smaller craft breweries because everyone else is saying, "Why are you charging more than New Glarus? Are you better than New Glarus? They're craft." So, and they were putting theirs super low because they were trying to go for the guys who were going after Bud and Bud Light, and they're trying to sell Spotted Cow. I mean, stuff is weird.
It kind of worked for them.
It worked wonderfully.
Worked very well.
But they also kind of set a price.
Right. Yeah.
So I don't know. I think stuff gets very, very complicated. What do you guys think? With 5 minutes to go.
5 minutes to go. I had no idea about the issue with pricing and New Glarus. That's really interesting.
I didn't know about it until the brewer told me.
Wow.
Coming to Illinois was like
here in Illinois, it's just like you have all sorts of different size breweries charging anywhere from like $7 to $18 for a 4-pack or whatever.
Well, I think what helped us, well, not helped, what affected, I specifically don't want to say helped us, was almost the opposite, was that we had Three Floyds, who has been one of the most expensive 6-packs always. They've always been more expensive than everybody else, and always been really desirable for consumers. So they kind of like set a high ceiling,
right?
Where people could come way in under that, and
so it's kind of the opposite there.
Because
I mean, there are some breweries like locally here that the price of their beer reflects the price of the ingredients that go in there.
Commodity pricing, right?
I think Off Color is really good with this, where they sell you a table beer and it's $7 for a 4-pack, and it's completely versus Apex Predator, which is $1 more, and then there's 6-packs which are $1 more, and it's transparent to consumers, I think, versus I mean we're talking about pricing now, but that's I think for a lot of consumers they're befuddled by price differences, and it's like, why does this beer cost $16 for a 4-pack? And this other beer costs $9,
right?
And they both are the same kind of beer.
And it's being at times, I think it's just there's so many reasons for it too. There's the answer could be so many things, half of which are genuine, half of which are just really taking advantage of going back to wine. I mean, why is wine so expensive? Because they know you'll pay for it.
Yeah, no, exactly.
That's why. This label, we use the same juice, but we just charge more for it because we can. And there's breweries doing that too.
Oh no, absolutely.
And I mean, some were trying to do it with kettle sour. I mean, Evil Twin, I think, famously at first was trying to do it with kettle sours, and there was pushback on it.
It's like a kettle soured 3.5% beer. And it's like this did not cost you what you're charging me.
They were going off lambic. Low alcohol sour beer is expensive.
Yeah.
Okay, not cool.
Keep it in things for 3 years, and
well, just as things get good, it'd be great if we had another 15 minutes or so, but we got a late start. But I want to thank my guests, and I want to thank my celebrity guest producer Logan for coming down and helping out tonight. I want to thank all you guys for listening, and I should probably name my guests, Adi Hastings and Andrew Gill. And what's the name of that blog again?
uselessbeerknowledge.com.
All right, by the time you listen to this, there'll be maybe some more.
Yeah, maybe
Content.
score an interview with Josh Noel, about his new book.
But thank you so much, guys. If you want to reach out to me, it's insiders@craftbeertemple.com. And I will see you in a week, maybe 2. I got a scratch event next week. So long.
You are listening to WLPN LP Chicago 105.5 FM Lumpen Radio.
Star Creature Vibes Radio.
Star Creature Vibes Radio. Star Creature Vibes Radio.
Star Creature Vibes Radio.
Star Creature Vibes Radio.
Star Creature Vibes Radio.
Greetings. Back with another episode of Star Creature Vibes Radio. Here on 105.5 FM, WLPN LP Chicago, Lumpen Radio, Star Creature Vibes Radio. Hosted by the Boogie Monsters crew. And myself, Tim Zawada. First up, tonight, or today, or tomorrow, special guest mix. DJ Cool Hirsch of the Boogie Monsters crew. Playing for you.